16 Minutes of Care is a podcast based on the CARE principles, a strategic framework that reveals how brands create impact by caring and, as a result, grow their business. In each episode, Isabel welcomes a company executive who explains how CARE has helped their business grow successfully and sustainably.
Today, I welcome Kerstin Knapp. She is the EVP of People and Culture at Vestas, a global leader in wind energy. In this second episode with Kersten, I would like to dive into the Care for the Planet part and talk a little bit more about the CARE Principles strategic framework. As Vestas is obviously a global leader in green and sustainable energy, I'm sure that we can learn a lot from them, although it's not specifically the responsibility of Kersten. Kersten, welcome.
Welcome, thank you so much.
I would first like to pick on a little bit on the first episode where we left it with Care for People. And we didn't have time in the first episode to talk about the technology and how technology is changing the whole human resources industry. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. It's really a lot of buzz going on about artificial intelligence. How do you work with it already at Vestas?
So first of all, thanks for the question. I love it. And, we are technology leaders. So it actually, when I started working for Vestas, I thought I really need to think through this. How are we in people and culture, adopting to that and how do we want to play a role? And before I start sharing what we do, I also would like to say, I think I have moved along my excitement about AI to a position where I would say, I think it's important that we remain human. And I'm actually really pleased to say that because, artificial intelligence, I think it's something which can help us a lot in many ways. But very often what you hear along my own professional experience is that people really miss if the H is not at the HR, the human is not there. So I actually think that, in order to be competitive as a company and really interesting, my question will be to think how I can remain human as an HR organization going forward. Now, nevertheless, I think artificial intelligence, it's something which is there. I think there are good things what it can do for us. One of the things what we are already doing in that regard when we talk about recruiting is actually getting help from AI to create gender-neutral job descriptions, or even, I would say, job descriptions which are more attractive to women. And how does that work? There is a tool which is called Recruit Diverse, and when you have a job description, how you would normally write it, you can have AI screening the job descriptions for words which are more attributed to men. So, scientifically speaking, there are words where men feel more attracted. And if you change them, you still have the same meaning, but you change them to a word which is more attracting and appealing to women. That is one of the ways how we actually, manage to focus more on hiring women in our business to create also the right gender diversity.
And do you already have results of that? Do you see more women coming in then?
We actually do. I think we have around 30% more women applying if you only apply that. And we have worked, I think, over 2 or 3 years in order to have that tool, really screening every single job descriptions. I think we are probably close to 100% where we do that. And it definitely brings you a higher participation rate of women into the recruiting process.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I think that's something that other companies could use too. You say at Vestas we put sustainability in everything we do. How do you translate it in a human resources strategy?
So, it's actually interesting because when we started with our sustainability strategy, that was shortly before I joined. It was the end of 2019, and then we kicked it off in 2020. And then we were starting to think about, okay, we have a great strategy now, so how do we make that work and how do we live this? And I think we did a very smart choice, because I remember very well in the beginning we said we need an organization to drive sustainability. And then we had several conversations within the executive management, and then we came to the conclusion, but do we really need an organization to drive sustainability in an organization like Vestas? Why would we not make it like, something which we do as an integral part of who we are? And I think that was the key conclusion of that conversation. So what we have actually agreed is that we are not creating an organizational unit which is called sustainability and stuff it with people and put it on top of everything. But rather than doing this, making sure that we have leaders who talk about sustainability and make that part of whatever they do. Because if you look at the entire, I would say, Vestas supply chain, it starts with research and development. So you can already think how you can create turbines which are more sustainable. It is then manufacturing. So how do you manufacture it in a more sustainable way? Are you having raw material which is more sustainable? How do you source? With who do you collaborate? Then we erect it. Obviously, there is also how do you make that in with a less carbon footprint? And then how do you service it? So I think what we really try to do is, when we say sustainability in everything we do, it's really trying to make it part of our everyday life. And for me, there is no difference between HR strategy and that, because what we do in HR is supporting the business in achieving their goals. And that's what we are also trying to support with what we are doing.
So that's interesting. So sustainability becomes part of every person's job instead of a separate department who's running the sustainability goals.
Exactly.
That's really interesting and very smart, I believe. I would like to dive into the CARE strategic framework, because CARE stands for more than care for people and planet. It stands for collaboration, agility, reliability and empathy. And maybe you could explain a little bit more, because you work in a very complex industry. How do you collaborate with others to reach these sustainable goals?
So I think one of the biggest challenges in I would say creating a sustainable, long-term sustainable environment is also how to scale up. And I think what we are trying to do is we are really trying to create a network with our partners, with our suppliers, and say how can we be more sustainable on our journey. Because if you just think about the massive impact we have as a global company in different components, working with hundreds of suppliers, if we can make that work into a better, sustainable way, I think we have a huge impact on the environment. And that's what we really try to do through different collaborations, but also different, I would say, service level agreements, where you just require a certain level of standards in all of those areas.
When you talk about agility, it can mean many different things. It's about really adapting the company to the many and fast changes in society. How agile can a big corporation like Vestas be?
Sometimes too agile. It's actually quite funny. I think Vestas is a very interesting company. I mean, we are just celebrating 125 years. And one of the things which is very interesting, if you read the company history, the company has reinvented itself many times.
Yes.
And I think you can feel that the culture of the company, there is a certain entrepreneurial spirit. So typically, our organization is very agile by itself. I think it's the opposite which we are trying to create. It's more stability, because the growth expectations are very big. And it still feels like we are a juvenile growing up because of that, because of the passion, because of the entrepreneurial spirit. And I think it's natural in our DNA that we are agile, and we are very excited about new developments so it's actually one of the very few organizations I've worked with where I feel that change is welcomed rather than a problem.
Okay.
But again, it can be too much on the other hand. So
nice.
There is still something to learn.
Good to know. Let's talk about the importance of reliability. In 2022, Vestas won the #1 spot in the Corporate Knights 100 Most Sustainable Corporations in the World. That is Corporate Knights. It's an American research company, and they do this on a yearly basis, a very rigorous assessment. They check 7,000 public companies with a revenue over $1 billion US dollars. You were the number one, which is an amazing achievement. How important is it to have this type of winning such kind of lists and being rewarded for that? How important is it for the reliability of the company?
I'm just thinking, how important is it for the reliability of the company? I think it's a very nice testament of what we are trying to do every day. And I also think it's a huge credit to our sustainability strategy, where we try to change from what we were before 2019 probably to becoming really a company which drives sustainability in everything we do. I think, we are not a company who is striving for rewards. We really believe in doing the right thing at the right time. And I think reliability is an important element in all of that. It creates trust. You need trust for long-standing relationships. I think you also need relationships to bring you through difficult periods, as we have just seen. So I think it's not something we are, let's say, hunting for, but we of course feel very recognized with a certification like that, and we are an ambitious company by nature. So we of course try to stay at the top of the charts, because I think it's a tribute of what we do, and that we are on the right track.
Mm-hmm. Let's move to the E of empathy. How important is that in your job, to show empathy?
I think it's probably what makes the difference between good and great. And often if people ask me when I try to explain what I think good HR looks like, I think the answer is often empathy. And I think I can even say it's not only linked to HR. I think it's what I would say leaders in general. I think it's very important that we try to understand where another person is, because very often all the business problems you can reduce to people issues. Very often when you think about what the business is struggling with, it is so often about people. And empathy helps us to find the right angle to bring people along, because in the end, leadership is influencing. You can't force somebody to do anything, but you can influence somebody by bringing a different angle to a conversation. And in order to do that, you also need to understand where another person is, where they are coming from, how they look at the world. And I think empathy is a key in all of that.
Interesting. When we look at ecological change, we see that more or less in society we see three groups. There's the climate doers, the people who really say, okay, let's just do this. What do we need to do? How do we need to adapt our lives? Then there's the climate delayers. It's the second group. It's people who rationally know we have to change things, but who are really trying to delay because they like the way they have their lives, they like the luxury they have, or they like the, whatever they take out of it. They don't want to change because they are a bit not so open to change, let's say. And then there's luckily a small part which is really the climate doomers, the ones who really don't want to change. They used to be the climate deniers. Now there's no more really denying about the climate, but there's still a lot of people doing it. When you look at these three types in general, would you say that we are going fast enough in the changes that is necessary to save the world and to save the planet and to make it a better place?
I'm afraid I will say no. I think what actually really irritates me sometimes is I'm traveling a lot through my job, but also in my private life. And when you travel in different countries, you see very different behaviors. And it's something which really struck me a long time ago, because I've lived in different countries in my life, and I had the opportunity to see many ways of how society lives, what's happening in other parts of the world. And one thing I always found really amazing when I remember probably back 15, 20 years ago when Austria started to separate waste, and it was a very hard adoption for everyone. And then I traveled to other countries and then they didn't do it. And then they just throw everything in one bin. And then I was like, but how should that work globally, right? I mean, in one country you try to separate, in another country you don't try to separate, and then globally everything gets in one trash bin. It's a very simple example, but I think we are in very different stages, and I think as we also can see from all the climate impact we're already experiencing every day, to whoever you talk today, everybody says, it's not normal to have this winter, it's not normal to have this heat, it's not normal to have this drought. I don't think we are fast enough.
Do you get personal empowerment by trying to change the tide, by being part of the game changers who try to become more sustainable and, for instance, in your case, work on green wind energy? Does it help you on a personal level?
I think for me it definitely gives me the purpose for doing something good in my life. I mean, I think over the years we change in our way of how we look at how we contribute, how we give back, what do we do in order to support the society. Personally, I feel very proud in working for a company like Vestas, where we believe we can really make a difference in the energy transition. And if you feel what's going on around it, I definitely feel it's very, I would say, empowering, but also gives you a lot of energy to do more.
Mm-hmm. Final question, what could anybody copy from you or from Vestas to have more positive impact on people and planet?
I would say it's very simple. It's like do what you love. And, I can only encourage people to go for their dreams. I think if you do the right thing, you will also have a lot of energy in driving it. And I think there's a lot of people who have energy and passion for a better life, for a more sustainable future, for a green world. And so, if you haven't been there yet, go for it. I think it's definitely worth it.
Thank you so much, Kersten. It was wonderful to have you at the podcast. Thank you at home for watching. Thank you for listening. Take care.
Want to create lasting impact with your brand while feeding sustainable growth? Check out thecareprinciples.com and see how we can help you. 16 Minutes of Care is an independent production from Isabel Verstraete, brand strategist, founder of The Care Principles, and author of the book, Does Your Brand Care? Help us reach more companies who are looking for caring and sustainable growth by giving this podcast all the stars it deserves and by sharing it in your network. Thank you and take care.